This is Jordan Montanino, National Director of DEs for the Central and Western Divisions. Also joining me on the call is Lisa Lodi, National Director of DE for the Northeast and Southeast Divisions, as well as Chris Terry, National Vice President, and Catherine Hanzelka, our DE Program Support Coordinator. So throughout today's WebEx, you will also be hearing from a few of your peers around the country who have some great things to share with you. And today's topic is The Committee Made Me Do It. And we're going to be discussing managing and working effectively with your steering committee. Today's presentation is a WebEx where all of the staff are muted automatically. So if you do have a specific question that you would like to ask, please just go ahead and type that into the chat window. And then if we have time to get to the answers during the presentation, we will. And if we don't have time, we'll answer the questions in an FAQ sheet that we will send out after the WebEx is completed. We are also recording the WebEx today so that you will be able to go back and review it again or share it with other members of your staff as you see fit. So I'm now going to turn it over to Catherine Hanzelka to show you some different committee resources available on the DE Resource Center. Take it away, Catherine.
Okay, we are going to open up the Resource Center on Chris's computer. Give us just 1 second. We're going to try to open it up.
Why don't you read through the screen? We won't go there.
Okay. So if we get it up, we'll go look at it. But right now we've had all the difficulties with the link today. So when you do get a chance to visit the DE Resource Center, we have a link to it on the home page of Merlin. And you'll see that it's going to look a little different. If you previously went to it, it might have been a little hard to find things, and we've really worked hard to rename things and put things in categories that are easier to find and easier to understand. And some of those categories that we've done are getting the right people, committee expectations, honoree and coach profiles. There's some sample meeting agendas up there for potential honorees, chairperson best practices, and much, much more. A lot of the things we've talked about on past calls have been added up there, and a lot of things are just samples. So if you see something you like, download it. Most of them we've kept in like a Word format or an Excel format, something that you can edit and customize and make your own, and hopefully maybe by the end of the call we can take you there to go see it. But right now I'm going to let Lisa take over and get us started.
Thanks, Catherine. And everything that Catherine just talked about is all, as she said, on the Resource Center. And there's actually a tab that's called the Committee Development tab, and everything that she talked about is under that tab. So the committee made me do it. Working with and managing your committee can be a lot of work, but having a strong, enthusiastic, and committed group of business professionals working toward the success of your gala will make your bottom line look great. Here are some helpful hints on managing the steering committee's expectations. Do what you say you are going to do as far as servicing your steering committee. If you say you are going to email out the notes from the last meeting before the end of the week, make sure that happens. Always do what you say you're going to do. That will add to your credibility, and it'll make your steering committee want to work for you. Make the job of being on a steering committee as easy as possible for all of its members. Supply them with the printed materials, the electronic collateral materials, everything that they will need to sell the event. Don't make them create their own letters or fact sheets about MDA. That's where we can provide very easy-to-use tools for them. Provide all of the MDA and event tools to your committee members. Give them fact sheets about the event, simple to understand information about MDA, sample letters to use, the procedures for when a committee member confirms a corporate sponsorship, what happens, what they should do. Make sure that you be timely in everything that you do for your committee. If you set deadlines, make sure MDA also follows those same deadlines. The number one reason that you have assembled this steering committee is to sell corporate sponsorships for your gala. This is a group of individuals who will be calling on their professional and personal contacts to attend the event. So this is a very, very important group for you to make sure that they are on our side and doing everything that they can. It's now my honor to introduce to you Brian Studdard, the Executive Director from Kansas City. Last year, Brian was new to MDA and was in charge of the district's Serving Up Cures event and steering committee. We've asked Brian to tell you about how he was able to work with an existing committee to make the changes he knew needed to be made in order to have a more successful event and raise more money for MDA. Take it away, Brian.
Thanks. Good afternoon. So just a little history on our Serving Up Cures Gala. So this will be our 7th year. For the first 5 years, it was the committee was exactly the same members as it had always been. So I was the newcomer in year 6. Halfway through the year, I added another committee member who happened to be an MDA mom, but she also was director of the convention center in which we were hosting the gala at. That was a huge success in a couple of ways, but it got the family involvement in there as well. So back to the prior years, so the previous year, year 5, the event netted $65,000. Not a big gala by any of our standards. But last year, thanks to some changes we were able to incorporate, many of those we had talked about on a previous call, but the indirect result was we were able to take it to $129,000 net versus a $65,000 net the year before. Some of those changes, I believe, were because I was able to participate and observe in the Houston Passport to a Cure event. For me, it was my only frame of reference as a newcomer to MDA, and so to me it was the gold standard of which I hoped we would become. And so that's kind of how we begin to make changes and pattern our Serving Up Cures somewhat after Houston's Passport to a Cure. So anyway, some of the things that we had to do in year 6 were, in my opinion, we needed to make it an MDA event, not a committee party, because I think that's where we really were in past years, is we were throwing a huge party, but we weren't really raising a lot of money. And so we needed to take it back. We need to have control of it. So the way I did that was, excuse me, I sought the support of my 2 largest sponsors at the event, and that was Associated Wholesale Grocers. They're basically a cooperative of about 1,600 members in the grocery industry. And so I was able to work with the senior vice president there on our committee, but also Acosta Sales and Marketing has a senior vice president here that is on the committee. He's actually the chairperson of the committee. So what I found was best for me was to work with the 2 of them somewhat individually, catching them for a breakfast, a lunch, a beverage after work, something, to talk about ideas. And then once we were all aligned and I could sell them kind of on my new vision, then we would present it to the committee at the next committee meeting. And that worked well because then these 2 large supporters, which really the event only happened because of them, they were the only 2 that were selling tables. So once they endorsed it, we were easily able to get the rest of the committee to go, oh yeah, good idea, let's move forward. So another thing that we had to do there is, as I mentioned, we needed to take control. We actually did not have control of the room. And so the reason why we didn't have control of the room was that essentially we had 20 different restaurant stations serving food, but they never shut down. And so people would mingle and linger at the tables regardless of what was happening on the stage. Therefore, there wasn't really a program, and it wasn't really an effective mission drive and things like that. So one of the changes was we went to a plated meal, and in doing so, we now had complete control of the room because people had to sit, etc. So that enabled us to have a program. From there, we also worked to enhance the experience of the night. We added entertainment, which had not happened in the past. The entertainment came in the form of a comedian as well as a band. And I guess another big change we made last year was that we increased our table cost. Now, this was a little bit of a hard sell because for 5 years, the table had been selling, the lowest price table had sold at $1,500. We moved it to $2,000. And that was a little bit of a hard sell because it was the same vendors every year that bought tables from the grocery industry. But when it was all said and done, If you were measuring performance, you would say we improved our financials in every category, whether it was sponsorship money, silent auction, live auction, mission drive, revenue enhancers, whatever. Every category you could measure, we improved. Therefore, it was a successful gala, not only in our eyes from a budget perspective, but from a committee perspective. Again, you have to realize they were all a little nervous because I was new, they didn't know me, and I was making a lot of changes, and it had been their event. I really was the outsider. So fast forward into this year, you know, we had to make some other changes, and we need to continue to grow our event. So this year, one of the things that I wanted to change was our actual look and feel of our materials. Kansas City had used our own artwork that we created, and, you know, it was cheesy. So for this year, we worked with Creative Services, and they improved our materials, and essentially we moved our Serving Up Cures into the Toast to Life materials, but it's still called Serving Up Cures. We just used their look and their feel. So it turned out fantastic. They looked great. The committee really liked it, and they felt like we upped our game. The materials looked professional. They didn't look like we made them in our office. And then, of course, we worked with procurement to order us a supply of the printed materials. So other changes this year that we're working on, this was interesting that my committee chair and my top sponsor, we had a meeting, and they said, hey, we think we should go up on the minimum table cost. And that's really interesting because last year it was a big discussion point to go from $1,500 to $2,000, yet this year they wanted to go to $2,500. And I guess from a mathematical perspective, last year we had 20 tables at the minimum, so therefore that should yield us an additional $10,000 in new income this year, provided we don't lose any of those sponsors. So that was a positive that the committee suggested, the committee chair and the top sponsor, Associated Wholesale Grocer. It was their suggestion. So another change for this year was in the prior 6 years, last year included, we'd always worked with two different brochures. We had a grocery brochure and we had a general brochure. So the general brochure would be if I went out and solicited, you know, somebody, you know, locally, a restaurant, a convenience store, whatever. However, the grocery industry was what Associated Wholesale Grocers and Acosta used to solicit sponsorships from manufacturers that they worked with. The problem with that really for us was twofold. One, it's two different brochures to manage for any printing errors or miscellaneous things. Secondly, when it came to the top two levels of the grocery brochure, there were monies that were essentially kicked back to the manufacturer for marketing purposes. So we actually netted less when they sold a table than if we sold a table. So the top table price on our brochure was $10,000 on the general, but it was $15,000 when it came to the grocery. However, they did a marketing spend out of that, and we actually netted about $7,500. So it was really kind of a $2,500 loss to us. So this year, it was actually AWG's suggestion that we move to one brochure and that we not provide any marketing monies. That's a huge win for us. It's less complication. Another enhancement there is that in prior years, AWG handled a large portion of our money. So when they sold a table to whatever, Kemper Ice Cream or whomever, Del Monte, they then did the billing and they provided a recap to us and later cut us a check. And the problem with that becomes when they don't get all their money in, we're still trying to determine who we've not been paid for. So this year, again, working with the committee members, AWG suggested, well, since we're going to one brochure anyway, why don't we just sell the tables and let you do all the billing? Well, that's another victory for us because now we're at our own mercy to follow up and to bill and to collect and so forth. And I think it opens up dialogue between us and that sponsor versus it all coming just from AWG. So I think it's a victory there as well. So I think that will improve the timeliness of the funding for us as well as the actual dollar amount of the funding as it relates to the marketing monies have now gone away. So those are some of the enhancements for this year. Another key enhancement this year is, and I call this one kind of the friends helping friends make money, is that one of our new friends / sponsors that we met last year has been able to help us secure a very noteworthy honoree. This year we've got University of Kansas men's basketball coach Bill Self, who's going to be our honoree and attendee at the gala. And that's all at no cost thanks to a sponsor. And the sponsor's not paying anything to Bill Self. He's a friend of Bill Self. Another plus there is that we'll also have a former KU player that will come and introduce Coach Self on the stage. Then as part of that, we've also arranged for our top-tier sponsors, the $10,000 tables, all to receive a signed basketball by this year's KU basketball team and Coach Self, and it will be a surprise. They won't know that. We'll actually surprise each table with, you know, a gift of a signed basketball. The other interesting thing about getting Coach Self is this was actually a request from last year from our largest sponsor, Associated Wholesale Grocers. They had said it would be great to have a speaker or entertainment, and they had asked, one of their requests was Bill Self, and we weren't able to get it last year. So this year we have been able to come forward with that. So again, we're kind of meeting their expectations and their requests. So we're developing our partnership and relationship with them. So in addition to this gaining Bill Self for the event, that same sponsor who got us Bill Self has said to us, I think you should add 200 seats to the room, 20 tables, and let my friends and I sell those 20 tables to KU alumni and KU sponsors. Well, that's huge to us. That's huge because, again, the minimum table cost is $2,500, so 20 new tables is $50,000 in potential new income, and I do believe we will sell them out. I'm also confident they won't all be at the minimum $2,500. So, again, when you look at how we're moving our gala forward, we've increased the table cost, which should yield $10,000 minimum, but we've added additional seats, which should yield $50,000 minimum. So we're really growing our income, and we're working with the committee to do so. I guess kind of wrapping up, thinking about the materials that we're using for this year, one of the things that I asked Creative Services to do is not only to give us the brochure, but give us an emailable version that we were able to. So they created an e-brochure that we can email around to friends and repeat sponsors. So as part of that, and I liked what Lisa had to say about making it easy for your committee, I created a personalized individual template letter from each individual committee member that they can essentially just fill in one name, Dear Brian, Dear Paul, Dear Sue, whatever. And that's all they have to change. And then they email this, and it's a letter that basically says, I have the honor of being on this committee, blah, 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 please join me. And then they attach this e-brochure and a commitment form. And again, this is totally new. We didn't do this last year. And in fact, last year, the only two sponsors that sold tables were Acosta Sales and Marketing and Associated Wholesale Grocers. None of the other committees bought or sold tables. So this year, we've been able to say, hey, all of you should reach out and see if you can't secure sponsorships. And here's this template letter. It's got your name on it, da-da-da-da-da. So I think the positive thing there is it's more involvement from the committee members, but also it's potentially new revenue because what we need to do is increase the diversity of the room from primarily being a grocery event to being more of a true Kansas City event. And I think by doing this, we'll be moving the mix of people in the room. And I think that's going to be important because as part of that, you're getting people to come to the event who realize it's a gala, a fundraiser, versus people that have historically come for all 6 years thus far, and 5 of those it was kind of a party. So I think we're going to drive new revenue because the people we're inviting will know it's a gala and a fundraiser, And so hopefully the night of fundraising will be improved and enhanced because of that. I guess another thing is that from an experience perspective, this year part of what we're also doing for those $5,000 and $10,000 tables is we're having a VIP cocktail reception that starts before the other reception. And of course it also gives them a first glance at all the auction items as well. But we're working to make sure that Coach Self is also a part of that, and he can mingle with those groups of people that have paid the higher dollars to be a part of the event. I guess in summary, the biggest fundamental change this year is we're asking more out of the committee members. And that's anything from asking them to secure at least 2 silent auction items per member, which last year they did not do, and also asking them to solicit some table sponsorships from their friends and contacts. I think that's fundamentally new, yet needed, but it was a big change because it was historically not what we had done in this particular committee. So I think for me it's been all about managing relationships and setting expectations. And I think I'm able to do that just by working through the committee. And I think if we look at it financially, when it's all said and done, thanks to the higher attendance, the higher minimum table cost, and hopefully some enhancements in the night of fundraising, my goal is going to be $200,000 met this year against a business plan of $142,000. So I think that's
awesome.
So,
just love that. Thank you so much, Brian. I think that you are going to, based on everything that you've outlined, we have no doubt that you're going to hit that $200,000 goal.
Well, thanks. I sure hope so. I need it.
Well, I have no doubt that you're going to get there. You've made some outstanding changes to the event over the last 2 years, and really appreciate you sharing all of that with the group. So next we're going to talk about running effective committee meetings. And the first point we're going to discuss is steering your committee from the background. And you heard Brian just touch on a lot of that during that conversation. And what we mean by this is that NDA needs to have some input into the decisions that are being made for the event. And we don't want to put ourselves in a position where the committee is making decisions that aren't in the best interest for NDA and aren't raising the most money possible. So we have to be sure that we have committee members who are allies and who have NDA's best interest at heart, so that when it comes to making those difficult decisions, we can help steer them towards what's best for NDA and the families that we serve. And then the next point is to make sure that your committee chair is well-versed and knows exactly what your end game is. So we need to have regular communication with our committee chair so that we ensure that they are on the same page as us and know what our main objectives and goals are, so that they can assist us in steering the committee towards achieving those goals. One of the ways also to help ensure that you're on the same page as your committee chair is to meet with the committee chair prior to every full committee meeting. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, you want to make sure that they're very familiar with the meeting agenda and the outcomes that we're looking for. And then second, your committee chair should be the person who's leading the actual committee meeting, not an MDA staff person, so that it's peer-to-peer. A committee chair asking the committee members to help them achieve a certain deadline, such as reaching out to their prospective sponsors, comes across a lot differently than if an MDA staff person was setting that same deadline, since the committee chair is also responsible for achieving the deadline just like the other committee members. And that's what makes it peer-to-peer. If more than one committee member is involved with a particular company, that can actually be a positive thing. We just need to make sure that they're aware of the other individual's interest in reaching out as well. Then they can tag team it together and make the ask even stronger. The more times prospective sponsors hear about the event from someone that they do business with, the more important they're going to feel it is for their company to be there and participate. And last but not least, you want to keep your meetings to an hour, as all of your committee members are busy just like we are. So if you know in advance that your meeting is going to run long, please make sure your members know that ahead of time so that they can plan their schedules accordingly. And next, I'm excited to introduce to you April Elashik, the Executive Director from Northern Illinois, to talk with you about two committees that she's involved with. The first is the Chicago Muscle Team Gala, and the other is the Citgo Golf Tournament. And both of these committees needed some rejuvenation, so let's go ahead and hear from April.
Thanks so much, Jordan. So thanks for having me today. Really excited to talk about committees. So first and foremost, obviously I did not start either of these events. I was very lucky to inherit them and be able to work with these committees. So they were established events, so just so everyone knows, it's very, I'm sure, relatable to what you're dealing with in working on your own distinguished events. So just like Brian said, having to come in and be able to build the trust with the committee of an existing event was obviously our mission number one. But I think we can all be honest in saying that a lot of the time, you know, working with our committees can be like herding cats. Everyone's got a lot of great ideas or ideas that they think are great, and there's a lot of different directions that they like to go in. And so certainly I think working with Jordan and the other members of the Distinguished Events Strategy team has really been an advantage over the past couple of years. So I just wanted to speak a little bit today to everyone and let you know some of the changes that we made to our events and how those came to be. One of which being, you know, effectively communicating our goals for the event. So I'm sure when everyone started business planning last year, they were really excited to see that they were being mandated with a 10% increase in our social events. So for most of us, that meant $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 increases, and we've got to deliver on that. So the first step for us was communicating that out to the committee that our goal for this year for our golf outing was to increase by $31,700 net for the event. And we took it step by step with the committee of how we were going to do that. Where did we feel like there was income potential? To be honest, our golf outing has sold out every year that I've worked on the event and every year prior to that that I know of. So increasing our participation wasn't necessarily an easy answer like it can be in some other events that we're trying to grow. So we really had to get creative. But I do work with a committee that has a lot of different challenges, as I know most of us do. A lot of our committee members have been there since the very beginning of this. They've worked with a number of different people from MDA, and currently one of my committee members is a former MDA employee who used to run this event that now works on the sponsor side. So, you know, I think just the most important thing to keep in mind, and the message that I wanted to share today, was do your homework and do your research, because I was able to come into this committee this year and I was met with a lot of resistance in adding new sponsorship levels to this event. So I came in and I said, you know, we are one of the only golf outings in the country that doesn't offer a presenting sponsorship level. And we have 3 expenses for this outing that we are not underwriting the cost on. So we are not making any additional funds on those. And these are things that not only other MDA events are doing, but other golf outings and other events in this market are doing for other nonprofit associations. So I think we all need to take a look at where our money can be better spent, how we can utilize these sponsorships, who we could prospect to sell these sponsorships to. And I was met with a lot of resistance that nobody was going to pay $25,000 to be a presenting sponsor, and there was not going to be a huge benefit to being the diamond reception sponsor and getting recognition in front of 60 people when there's 400 at the golf outing the next day. And I'm happy to say that after a lot of debate on those levels, I was able to convince the committee to just give it a shot, that it wasn't going to hurt anyone just to put those levels on our materials, because this is what was being offered. We needed to stick with the best practices of MDA and have those conversations that, hey, this is my job. It's my full-time job to ask people for money. It's my job to be a fundraiser. So you need to trust me and trust that MDA's got a whole group of people that are working on social events year-round in different markets across the country, and they're recommending we do this. So long story short, we tried it, and we actually ended up selling both sponsorship levels, the presenting sponsor and the diamond reception sponsor. We actually sold 2 of the presenting sponsorship levels and brought in an additional $40,000 in income, and now we're going into our event $66,000 ahead of prior year. So I think just being able to demonstrate that level to your committee and having your research and your history to back that up is key. So, I mean, you can certainly go online, use the resources, but I found that working with Jordan and Lisa and Chris and being able to ask, you know, what's being done in other markets and where do we see the results so that I can speak to that during my committee meetings has been really the most beneficial for us. So everything from adding levels to having a seated dinner to utilizing the Maestro software, which every single one of my committees has been terrified of. It's really just having the tools and the information to provide to them to keep them at ease that this is the best decision for the event, and that this is really, we know best, this is our job. So that was what I wanted to share today in terms of the success that we've seen in our market.
Well, thank you, April, and thank you very much for following the strategies and the best practices of MDA and having success. We look forward to hearing about your golf outing, which I know is coming up in a couple of weeks, and then your muscle team, which is this fall. So good luck. Now let's talk about the Distinguished Events Gala metrics. And again, many of you are familiar with this, but it doesn't hurt to go over them one more time. And as you know, the established Distinguished Events Gala metrics tell us that corporate sponsorship income should make up 65% of your overall gala's income. And putting that in perspective, on a $100,000 net gala, you will have approximately $133,000 gross. And of that, corporate sponsorship dollars should be $86,710. The important people and groups of people that will help you accomplish this task of raising the corporate sponsorship dollars include your honoree or coach, your steering committee, and your chair. Now let's just briefly talk about each one of these important roles. The honoree or coach, and the coach is what we refer to them in a muscle team gala, is a person who works for a company that has a broad base of vendors or suppliers. The honoree or coach must be willing to solicit their vendors or suppliers to support this event. An excellent example of a successful honoree is Kroger's involvement with Houston Passport to a Cure Gala. In that market, Kroger solicits all of their vendors, including companies like Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, Anheuser-Busch, Glazers, Borden's Dairy, Frito-Lay, Boar's Head, and on and on. Grocery store chains make great honorees or coaches because of the vast number of vendors or suppliers that they can reach out to. Other companies that have wide-reaching scope include construction companies, corporate headquarters of businesses that are located in your community, and so on. It's recommended that you ask your honoree or coach to raise a minimum dollar amount when you ask them to serve in that capacity. Typically, it's somewhere between the dollar range of $25,000 to $50,000, depending on your event and your market. Then the honoree or coach is recognized at your gala. The next group of individuals we want to talk about are your steering committee members. These are people recruiting corporate sponsorships and recruiting guests to attend the gala. They are individuals who have been recruited to be on the steering committee, and they too must be willing to leverage their professional and personal contacts in support of the event. A minimum dollar amount should be set for each one of them to raise. Generally, that dollar amount is somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000. It could be higher, again, depending on your event and your market. And keep in mind that if you have a $100,000 netting gala, $86,000 should come from corporate sponsorship. And breaking it down, a steering committee of 10 individuals would then be responsible for recruiting $8,600 in corporate sponsorship each. And remember, not every member will do what they say. It's recommended that you recruit more steering committee members than what you think you will need to meet your financial goal. The last important person that we talk about is the chair. The chair is the person who runs your committee meetings. MDA best practices, as you've already heard on this WebEx, tell us that the committee person runs your meetings, not an MDA staff person. Committees like to have that peer-to-peer involvement. What do you look for in a chair? Characteristics like a strong leader, someone who is well respected in the business community, a person who is easy to listen to and understand are very important. Someone who will work well with the MDA staff in making sure the committee is following MDA's GALA best practices is also very important. It is then up to the MDA staff to work with the chair to make sure that they are fully equipped to run a successful and productive meeting. MDA staff prepare the agenda and review it with the chair ahead of time. MDA staff prepare all handout materials and provide a meeting recap for all of the members in attendance, as well as those who couldn't make the meeting. It's now my privilege to introduce to you Katie Conley. Katie is the Associate Director of Business Development in Manhattan, who coordinates the New York Muscle Team and the Taste Down Under. Currently, Katie's at summer camp, but she's going to tell us about how she and her New York City team manage and set expectations for those two committees. Katie?
Hello. Can you guys hear me? I am at summer camp, so I am covered in head-to-toe glitter right now, having awesome adventures. But with our communication with our committees, I think, you know, Lisa, you said it earlier, and I had actually already wrote it down, is do what you say you are going to do. And that's just so important, because if you have the right chairs, the right honorees, the right steering committee, et cetera, they are going to be very busy people. So if you say that you're going to send them notes by 10 a.m., make sure you send it before 10 a.m. If you owe them, you know, different sponsorship reports, make sure you get that to them, because they will remember, and, you know, it doesn't make a good impression on, you know, how they view you or how they view actually the organization, because usually they're involved with a lot of different companies. With my two different events, what I do is I have our in-season where, you know, you're following up on those weekly emails, so Friday, and I give them updates on sponsorships, auction items, everything that's in regards to that event. So also one of the things we do is we call out and to say an extra special thank you to some of our star committee members that week. So whoever just brought in maybe $60,000 in sponsorship, we're going to bold it out and we're going to put it in the middle of the email so everyone sees. This also helps because then everybody else on the committee who may not have stepped up to that level, they're also going to maybe feel a little bit bad that, oh, Dennis did that, I should probably do something for next week. Other things is, again, you're just putting that year-to-date in there, last year. These are people who are all part of businesses. They understand that you run on numbers as well, and it's not okay for them to not know your numbers. So again, if it's, you know, you need to have an $86,000 or $160,000 before the event, they need to know that. They need to know where to make it up, because that ask is better coming from them than coming from you for a sponsor. Other things that we do when we are, you know, not in our on season, when we're a little bit off season, is just following up with people. So I follow up with all of my committee members individually. I will grab coffee with them, you know, we'll meet for a lunch just to check in, see how they're doing. One of my committee members said it best, is that he just doesn't want to hear from a charity only when they want money. They want to make sure that you care, because they obviously care about you. And so I'll just check in with them. You know, we've had a lot of great research updates lately, a lot of news about drugs and going to the SBA. So just grab a quick blurb from one of the MDA press releases and send it to the committee. Make sure they know it's going to just them, and this way they feel connected to MDA year-round. You know, again, my thing that I always try to do is to say if I follow up by noon, I'll try to get it before noon just to make sure that they always have it. And I think also what everybody else is saying is make sure that you are always making it easiest for them. So every single email I send to my committee during that on season includes that sponsorship form, the auction donation form, and anything else. Even if I know they have that, I just want to make sure that they can always find an email from me with all of the materials they would ever need. So communication is super key, and regular and consistent is the best. Even if you think that you are over communicating with them, chances are you are not, because they may have deleted an email or they may have been on vacation and not read it. So just, you know, continue to reach out to them, phone calls, emails, visits, and that's the best way to build a successful committee who's committed to your event.
Well, thanks so much, Katie, for sharing that with the group. And I think that some of your points about communication are really important, and I know that everyone on this call will take that to heart. You're always better off giving them more than less, for sure. Great advice. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and ask Catherine if we have any questions in the chat window that we need to answer.
Nope, not at this time. We look good.
Okay, great. Well, then I want to thank everyone, and especially our guest speakers, Brian, April, and Katie, for participating in today's WebEx. We know that we've covered a lot of information over the last 50 minutes, and yet we got some really great and innovative ideas from your peers, our guest speakers from across the country. Really great job, you guys. We also want to remind you that our next National Monthly WebEx is scheduled for Tuesday, September 1st at 1:30 p.m. That's Central Standard Time. And then the topic of that WebEx is going to be, so what's in it for me, said your sponsor. And we're going to be covering corporate sponsorship packages, branding, and underwriting opportunities. So with that said, we're going to give you guys a couple of minutes extra back in your day today. And then for those who have the time available, we would love for you to join us on our 3 o'clock WebEx this afternoon, where we're going to be talking about the ultimate guest experience. So thanks so much, and we hope to see you at 3 o'clock. And if not, we'll talk to you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.